Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I'm Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. So according to Microsoft, this is an Xbox. But if you ask anybody else, it is a black and green Quest 3S. So when Meta said they're going to send me one, I really didn't know what to do with it. However, I came up with a cool idea. Today, we're going to put that whole Xbox claim to the test. Is this a good Xbox? What other alternatives are out there? And I'm going for the $4,000 Xbox versus the $400 Xbox. Now you might be asking yourself what a $4,000 Xbox is. We'll get into all of that. But according to Microsoft, everything is now an Xbox, or anything could be an Xbox with their Game Pass and streaming service. So we're going to put a lot of those services to the test, including my Xbox Series X, my PC running an RTX 5090, of course, this Quest 3S, and even something like a phone with a backbone. So we're going to have a lot of different examples, and we're going to see how this buddy holds up. But first, let's address the fact that this was an underwhelming announcement to Quest owners. I expected the Microsoft Meta VR collab to look like this.
I need a weapon.
Don't get me wrong here, guys, there is almost something for everyone. At $400 with the included Elite strap, 3 months of Game Pass, and an Xbox controller, it's actually a really good deal. Gaming on a Quest hopefully grows a little bit thanks to the brand recognition of Xbox, and Microsoft gets a few more Game Pass subscribers. But unfortunately though, the Quest gamers got nothing out of this deal, and I would have absolutely killed to see a Microsoft IP heading over to the Meta Quest. I mean, there's already an awesome mod for the original Halo. Why couldn't these two mega corporations use a drop of their money and bring over one of those IPs? I'll keep my fingers crossed that this happens in the future. But for right now, let's get back to Xbox Gaming Anywhere, starting off with the Meta Quest 3S. Running Game Pass on a Wi-Fi 7 network with 5 gigabits up and down, so this is basically the ideal circumstances. Now, even with all that bandwidth, you are limited to 1080 resolution and 60 frames per second, which can be a noticeably low resolution when you have a virtual screen that goes up to 26 feet. Now, I will say artifacting and pixelation are minimal, and while the game does look good, I am expecting more. Now, surprisingly, latency isn't bad at all, and this is with a Bluetooth connection from the controller to the headset, and then playing the game over the internet. I expected a lot more delay, but honestly, it feels quite smooth here and is extremely playable. Now, moving on to a very similar comparison, I'm going to use my Xbox Series X with Game Pass on my projector screen, which is roughly the same size as the virtual screen you get from the Meta Quest. Now, to my absolute surprise, it pretty much feels exactly the same. I mean, I was honestly startled here at just how close the Quest looked to the Xbox Series X running Game Pass. Like, I had the same level of pixelation, which was minimal, but you can notice that the screen is a little bit lower res than I'm used to, especially when you're, on such a big projector. Mine is 24 feet. They say the Quest gives you up to 26 feet. So yeah, it looked almost exactly the same. I couldn't get over that. And oddly enough, I felt like there was more latency playing on my Series X than playing on my Quest, but I would say they're basically the same. So right there, honestly, if you're using Game Pass, it's a great Game Pass device. But moving to the local experience, so running the game directly from my Xbox Series X, well then there's a huge difference. Immediately, I noticed a color difference because my projector has HDR support. So the game goes into HDR, and then it's also running at 4K 60 frames per second. So you can immediately notice the difference. Those colors, they're just so much more vibrant. They pop, the reds like shoot out of the screen. So that does up the ante for sure. But this is always the difference between streaming games and local. If you have a super high-end machine locally, yes, you can get more out of it. That's just how it works. So it's definitely a different comparison running the game locally versus running the game off Game Pass. But in terms of the Game Pass experience, it's up there. The Quest is pretty much as good as it gets. And let's test a few more devices for comparison. Here we have my Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, once again running Doom the Dark Ages, but I'm using my Backbone for controls. Now the Backbone has a USB connection, so I don't have to worry about Bluetooth latency, but even without it, the Game Pass experience feels extremely similar to both the Quest and playing Game Pass on a Series X. Now I'm sure with some high-speed cameras we could probably detect a latency difference, but overall it feels minimal and is not diminishing my gameplay experience. And I'm sure to absolutely no one's surprise, you know, the game is just best when you're playing on a PC with a 5090, but that's just cheating. That's not fair. That's a 1%er's machine. I'm running at insane resolutions at insane frames per second, and I have my choice of using my keyboard or mouse or switching to my gamepad at any point in time. So, I mean, those are the benefits of PC. There's pros and cons, and that's actually what I want to get into. I don't want to make this a PC versus console debate. I actually just want to get into the pros and cons of Game Pass versus local gaming and some of the other differences that can impact your overall experience. Now, there's also some room here for results may vary, and there's obviously some differences between running games off a network and running games locally. And when I say results may vary, you do need a robust internet connection, not top of the line, not the 5 gigabits down that I have, but you need a fairly solid internet connection to be able to play Game Pass games at all. So if you don't have an internet connection, you can't play these games. Now, other pros include, well, you don't have to worry about storage. You don't have to wait for the game to download. You just hop in at any time when you have an internet connection. Now, when you move to local, yes, you have to worry about storage, which is a headache on the Quest. You have that initial download, which can be, you know, really, really lengthy. Doom the Dark Ages was 80 gigs, and even with my 5 gigabit down, it took quite some time because you don't always hit that 5 gigabit from Microsoft. So you have those initial downloads that are huge, but the games tend to load quicker when you have them installed locally, and then you could usually up the graphics more, and you could obviously play offline. So those are your pros and cons to weigh out. So I don't really consider everything as an Xbox. It's just everything connecting to an Xbox server. It's their marketing, it's their branding. I understand they're moving away from hardware. So there are some differences, and again, results may vary because, you know, depending on what hardware you have, how stable your internet connection is, yada yada. Overall though, my biggest takeaway from this experience is Game Pass is solid. Like, it runs pretty much exactly the same on all these different devices. It feels really good. The latency is not bad. Quality, I do wish was a little bit better. You know, I wish we could get above 1080, but overall, very solid experience no matter what device you're using. But if you can run games locally, nothing compares. Nothing compares to having a high-end system and running games locally, but that's, you know, a 1%er or a enthusiast level of tech, sort of. Not everyone is going to be able to duplicate that experience. I will say, if I didn't have a choice, Game Pass is an excellent option, an amazing value. But from me personally, you know, someone who really loves this stuff, works in this industry, it's nearly impossible to move away from a local gaming system. The pros are just too high for me. And that was today's video. A little bit different than normal. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Thumbs up here. If you like this type of stuff, I'd love to hear your feedback. You know, I like to have a little bit more fun in my videos. Lean a little bit more into the entertainment while also educating. But hey, just let me know what you think. And as always, I'll see you guys on next time.